I'm excited to be launching the Nurture Collection. This collection has been in the works and on my heart for more than a year. I had surgery last summer, so over a year ago, and went down the road of waiting for biopsy results and wondering if I was beginning a cancer journey. I'm really very thankful that I was not, but the way that I work through and process things, I tend to go to the very worst case scenario and then backtrack from there. So in my processing with the thought of facing breast cancer and a mastectomy, I turned to art as a place to kind of work out those feelings, and started by making some vessels, some of these lidded vessels, just thinking about all that is contained in our breast as a woman, and that's certainly metaphorical, but also physical. And from there, moved on and began to think of other ways to express these ideas beyond this type of container, because I feel like this is something that not everybody would feel comfortable having sitting around their house. It's definitely appeals to some people and not to others. And it's quite literal, I guess, as well. And talking it over with a friend, she helped me think of, what if I turned it inside out and made the inside of the breast as the container? And so that was the beginning of many iterations working out the design of the nurture bowls, the mammary bowls that are in this collection that are really featured. And it has been something that has been just so I just have cherished this process, and would love to tell you some of the things that have been coming to me as I've been working through this design. And I also made some paper pieces for this collection as well. And as I made, this is not one of the finished ones. It's one that hasn't gotten finished yet. It was on a slower track. Some artwork just takes a little longer. But the paper pieces, you know, the outline of the breast is present, but it really is more of a landscape kind of feel. And what I also love about that is what's on the inside, kind of more of an internal view, is more of what's highlighted here. And so that's definitely a way that I've been processing the ideas that I've worked through in this collection. And in these paper pieces, the two that are listed in the shop, the mammary glands, and then this one doesn't have its lymph nodes yet. I've been stitching those on with embroidery and beads, but they both have mammary glands and lymph nodes as a really big part of the design. And I've been asking myself, like, I just cannot leave that. I have to have both of those present. And what is it about those two aspects of our body, those two, and the design element here? And what I've been really coming to is this concept that the mammary glands, you know, they're like this flower-shaped, soft, beautiful, and their function is this giving and providing nurture. And even if you have not breastfed a baby, as a woman, we have this ability to comfort with a softness and to nurture and give and just provide a place that people can feel safe and loved in a unique way. But if we are all giving, nurturing, pouring out, sometimes that can lead us to feel resentful and hold on to things. And we're also vulnerable in that way. And it can lead us to become hurt. And we can hold on to those hurts in those places where we've been harmed. And one thing that I've certainly been learning in my own personal journey has been to see how important it is to have the balance of the nurturing, giving that kind of is symbolized by the mammary glands with what I feel like the lymph nodes do. And I love how they kind of have another landscape feel, as though they are like rivers. And the lymph nodes, now I am not a medical doctor, but according to my understanding, the lymph system is part of our detox system of our bodies, and they look like rivers. And I just think of how important it is for our health to keep them flowing, keep the lymph moving and flowing in our body. Exercise helps with that. There are a lot of things that can help with that. But symbolically, as I've been thinking about them in this collection, I've been thinking about how important it is to let go and let things move through. When we are hurt and we hold resentment, it can block us up and hold toxins inside our emotional heart and even our physical body. And I think some of the people who have been researching cancer feel like we can hold on to negative feelings in our lymph system, the toxins in our body from our environment, if they're not flowing out and detoxing, can lead to cancer developing. Now, again, this is not a medical statement. I am not a doctor, but these are things that I've read. I definitely tend towards a more holistic approach to medicine, and these are some of the ideas that I've felt like resonate, because they resonate with the truth that I've found in my own heart through kind of walking through emotional healing and looking at the places that I've been hurt and my vulnerable places, and where I've held on to that hurt and resentment, and it's blocked me up and made me less healthy. And as I've learned to grieve those things and to forgive and to let go of the resentment and to choose to let them flow like the river, like this, like a healthy flowing lymph system that looks like tributaries and rivers, it brings so much health and vitality, and it allows me to then come back into this place of nurturing and giving that the mammary glands represent to me. And then we've got an allusion, a very artistic allusion to the musculature inside of the breast that's just kind of there supporting and providing infrastructure. And I think in my mind really alludes to the strength. I've been talking about the softness and the nurturing and that kind of ability that women have in a special way. But women are the strongest. Oh my word. There is this intense strength that women have. And I do not speak about feminine softness and beauty and sensitivity in a way that at all negates the rock solid strength of women. I mean, women are the ones that have to push babies out of their bodies. Women often are the ones that are in the nitty gritty caregiving, with parents at the end of life, cleaning messes that are unimaginable. Women often are the ones that are doing jobs that are not recognized, not thanked, and require an intense resilience and strength to carry about. And so, and the design element of the kind of musculature there within the breast is kind of my nod to that balancing aspect. And when you are an artist or any kind of designer, having threes, especially odd numbers, but really when you have three things, three main colors, three main textures, composition with three, that's a really strong standing point. And so I love that it was kind of an intuitive thing for me developing, but to look back and see that, yes, I have my three main elements here with the lymph nodes, the mammary glands, and the musculature, and I feel like all of those together are able to really paint a picture of my experience of womanhood and femininity. And for those of you who don't know, I'm one of four girls, so growing up, and most of my cousins are female, so I've certainly lived a life that has been blessed with many, many women around. And so I feel like it's been such an honor to make a picture of womanhood and femininity through my artwork. And then another thing to mention, and I'm seeing some love coming from one of my sisters, so thank you. Another thing to decide, we've got all of this kind of internal world here, and I think that's another thing that's interesting about our world tends to objectify women. All too often, women are looked at and discussed and valued for our outside. The beauty, the provocative, sensuality, all of the kind of outside appeal of women. And so I really loved that this collection emphasized the internal world and all the richness and depth of beauty, strength, and flow of life that's there. So I enjoyed doing that, but deciding what to do about the outside of these bowls, with all of the pieces, the bowls and the vessels, I couldn't imagine picking these pieces up. And that's one thing that I really love about making ceramics. I love to do paintings as well, but the ceramic aspect, the idea that somebody's going to physically hold it and feel it and interact with these pieces in a really tangible way, is something that delights me as an artist. For me to have my hands on it and to know that somebody else will echo this kind of touch and care. So the thought of what it feels like to somebody is really important, and I couldn't imagine picking up something that's representing a breast and having it be cold and glassy, which is what the finish of a glaze leaves it with. It basically is melted glass, and it's just a cold, shiny, hard, glassy finish, and that just did not make sense to me. So the choice I made was to leave the outside of these vessels as clay without a glaze on them. And it gives you this really kind of earthy, raw, tangible feel. And this one has some speckles. It's just very earthy. And I went and did kind of some light burnishing where you just kind of compact that clay just a little bit. If you burnish things a lot, it can be an incredibly intensive process, and it can leave you with something. Sometimes if people do intensive burnishing, it can leave you with something that's almost as glassy as a glaze. And I didn't want to go to that extent. So I've left them with that kind of softer, earthy feel. And it also felt incredibly important to me to have the variety of womanhood represented. And so I love that with clay, there's a wide variety of tones. The ground in different places looks different colors. Sometimes I make things out of a clay that fires to like a terracotta orange color, and that actually it's called Lizella clay because it comes from Lizella, Georgia, which is close to my home where I grew up and was born. And so I love making things out of that clay and it being that red dirt. But then I also enjoy the qualities of white clay and how I realized throughout the kind of design process that I needed to have the white clay on the inside so that the painting would show up. The darker clays, it just disappeared. So, making the insides of them all white, but then I added something it's called slip. It's basically a clay that's wet enough to be like a paint. And so I used the clay slip for the outside of these bowls, and I have 3 different skin tones represented by a lighter clay, and then I've got the darkest clay, and then I've got a medium kind of mid-tone brown clay. And one thing that is interesting, with ceramics, there's this really big hands open about the process, because with painting, you can see exactly what's happening in the moment and you can adjust it in the moment. With clay, there's this kind of alchemy that happens where you put them into this container of the kiln and it applies great heat and pressure, and things beyond your control will happen. And it's really, sometimes it's frustrating. I've had some glazing issues as my kiln is one that was repurposing it and the bottom of it's not getting hot enough. So there's some unpleasant things that happen in the kiln sometimes, but then there's also just kind of like, oh, wow, look what happened. So one of the things that happened with these, that's one of those magic alchemy in the kiln, is that the yellow, greenish yellow of the lymph node system that's painted on like rivers comes through the clay, and that shadow of it is shown on the lightest color clay. If you look really closely at the other colors, you can see a really subtle allusion to it, but on the white clay you can really see more of that kind of shadow of the lymph node system, which I think adds a really nice, I love that it's kind of just in one little place, just like a little focal point on the outside. And I also think symbolically about how what's going on the inside is eventually going to start seeping through to the outside. And so again, just kind of how I talked about the importance of the lymph system to be processing and releasing toxins. I went through a few years of intense stress with our family, and oh my word, I mean, hold on just a second. So we had a tree fall on our house. All the kids had head lice, 12 cases of strep throat, a robbery, rehab for a relative. We had an intense year, and all the stress of that was, and I had my fourth baby. So I had a newborn, and it was my fourth. So it was a lot to carry, and I just held it all inside and had so much kind of anger and stress and tension that I just didn't even have a way to let out at the time. And what happened was my skin broke out, and I had a year of rosacea and skin issues. And finally, really, when I started the internal work of processing some really early memories in places where I had been hurt and held on to that pain, once I started grieving that and learning how to move through the kind of grieving and healing process with some of those early trauma memories, it's like that lymph system of my body literally started working through the ways I had stored all of that negative feelings inside. And eventually my skin started clearing up. So anyway, as the lymph system shows through on the outside, I love that has that, it felt right to me. So a pleasant surprise from the kiln. Look in the shop. The Nurture collection is live. Because of the kiln issues, there are not as many of these bowls as I had intended, but those are being resolved. I know what to do to get them working properly for the next firing. And so if you want to place an order for one and wait, within the month, we will be able to get those filled. And I'm excited for y'all to have them and enjoy having these reminders of the miracle of the intricacies of and depth of womanhood and how we're made.